you quit your job as a teacher. You went
Yes,
back.
I did.
You didn't. You were still teaching, but in another way. You started your own
Yes.
business. But I believe that Italians normally they're mostly entrepreneurs, so because they own a lot of restaurants, they have that kind of spirit. So when you go
Yes.
to talk to your parents, you say, "Mom, Dad, I'm quitting my job as a teacher and I want to become an entrepreneur." What was the reaction?
Oh, good question. Nobody's ever asked me this, Hugo. I love that you've asked this. I think my parents were sort of concerned,
Yes.
but at the same time, they knew their eldest daughter, who is me. They knew that I've always been very independent. One of the things that I did early on, which is very non-traditional, is I moved out of my parents' home quite young. I was in my early 20s. And typically in Italian families, you don't do this unless you're getting married. But you don't do it unless you're getting married.
Okay.
But I did because I needed the independence. I had younger siblings. I wanted to just be independent with my life. So I was paying my own rent. I was paying for my own car, paying for my own things. I had no financial help necessarily in any way, shape, or form other than working a bunch of jobs at once and getting a lot of experience and paying my own bills. So I think they knew at that time that, okay, you did your one degree and now you're not going to use that degree and you're going to go do something else. Yeah. So originally when I made the switch from journalism to education, they were already questioning it, but they thought, well, you know what you want and you've always gone after it. So great. But then when I wanted to make the switch from let's call it a secure salary at a school board to then going to entrepreneurship, I think they were concerned, but they realized it was really just an extension of what I was good at, and that was teaching, and that was sharing knowledge. And so I think that me being the eldest daughter had a lot to do with it because I had more time than my siblings at that point to prove myself. So they were concerned, but I think they know my character, and I was willing to do whatever it took to make that work.
So your parents were okay with that, but you were married at that time, no? At that time when you started your business, you were.
I was already married too. I was already married, so I'd already been out of the home for several years.
So as a woman entrepreneur, because I know some younger entrepreneurs, women. Is your husband an entrepreneur too, or he has a job, or
he at the time was also an entrepreneur. Okay. So he had several family-run businesses also in the educational field. Yeah. So it wasn't a big stretch. So we understood each other quite well, you know, what it was like to be an entrepreneur. So he had started out, you know, he had his student jobs, but primarily in their family, they had family-run businesses. So it was not foreign to them.
So he understood that when you decide to become an entrepreneur, because I believe there's a lot of women entrepreneurs, they have to, especially if they're married, they have to talk with their husband, like, I want to make the jump, I want to become an entrepreneur. And maybe their husband has a job. So what would you say to those girls and women? They say, look, what would you say to them, like, to really make the jump into what can they need to say to their husband?
Well, I think first and foremost, there has to be a certain level of trust and good communication skills. And one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received, whenever you're trying to, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a family member, whether it's a business partner, anytime you want to introduce something new into your circle of influence, one of the things you always have to think about is, where is the benefit as a whole? So you also have to show that individual what's in it for them. So if it's a female entrepreneur who has to convince their spouse, listen, we might have to have some sacrifices at the beginning because I want to leave my secure job. You want to be able to show also what's in it for the other person. So for example, if the female entrepreneur says to her husband, well, you know how you always want to take those trips? Now we can take more trips, or I can be home more, or I can run this business online if it's an online or a digital business, and I can be home more if we want to start a family. So there's always those common grounds. You have to go back to those common grounds of what you both want in your relationship as a couple and figure out how the entrepreneurship life answers those needs. And that's where I feel that a lot of people are afraid to have that conversation, but then they realize that the entrepreneurship life can allow them to do some of those things that they say that they want. And if you do it right, you can do some of those things earlier than you ever thought possible.
Yeah, well, you have to sacrifice the short term for the long term, even
for sure.
That, because Also, the man will say like, okay, my wife is gonna make more money than me. Let's start thinking about it, So it really needs to be discussed. It really needs to be, you have to sit down together and talk about it, and what's the plan and what would happen. That's what I believe. Discussion, conversation is good for that
Right.
kind of stuff.
And you know what they say, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
Just going to throw that out there.